All right, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Answering more questions for Quora. What is the definition of resting on Shabbat? Uh, According to classical traditional Jewish sources, the definition of resting on Shabbat is refraining from 39 forbidden forms of labor and many things that are related to those forms of labor. Most of those are creative forms of labor, just like God rested from creating the universe on the Sabbath, according to the Bible. So too, anything that we do that is creative, that transforms something from one form to another, which is, I guess, the definition of transformation, would be prohibited on the Sabbath. So examples would be uh, burning fire or extinguishing fire, writing, cooking, sewing, things like that, that transform something from one thing to another thing. Some other examples that might not be as obvious would include carrying things outdoors in certain situations if it's technically a public domain. The way that this is derived from in the Bible is that in the book of Exodus it tells us that one may not build the tabernacle on the Sabbath. And so therefore anything that would have been used to build the tabernacle would be prohibited on the Sabbath, whether it's used for building the tabernacle or for one's own personal use. And all of those 39 categories have an equivalent in what was done to build the tabernacle. The tabernacle was the temporary or portable temple where the sacrifices could be brought in ancient times, from the time of Moses until the time of King Solomon. There was the tabernacle. Then once King Solomon built the temple, there was no longer a tabernacle, but there was a temple. And so therefore there was no longer any sacrifices anywhere outside the temple legally, although people still did so until pretty much the time of Hezekiah. People still continued to bring sacrifices outside the temple. It was against Jewish law, but in any event, whatever was done to build the tabernacle, since the tabernacle was not allowed to be built on the Sabbath, that work had to cease. So too, anything that would have been used for that type of thing in those categories of labor would thus be prohibited even, for personal use. The list of the 39 categories can be found in the Talmud Tractate Sabbath in the 7th chapter. And there are what are called toldot. There are, outgrowths of those 39 that are also prohibited. And additionally, the rabbis made rabbinical laws that prohibit many things that are related to these 39, even if they are not actually a violation. But nonetheless, Jewish law has both biblical law and rabbinical law, which rabbinical law derives its authority from the Bible, from the book of Deuteronomy. There are other traditions that are later in origin, relating to certain technological advances and so forth, that some communities have accepted. In general, if one belongs to such a community, he should also avoid many of these things, although it is a matter of dispute and not everyone agrees to some of these things, but in general it's been accepted, and there are opinions that are based in strong legal precedents that many of these things that are traditionally prohibited may actually fall under an actual biblical or rabbinical prohibition. Nonetheless, one should, obviously, if one belongs to an Orthodox community, follow all of the stringencies that one's community follows. And but in any event, that's the definition. So, a good example would be for the following. Why can one not drive a car on the Sabbath? There are two reasons. One is that the combustion engine is burning fire, which is one of the biblical prohibitions. It's actually mentioned in the Bible. All those 39 prohibited labors are considered biblical prohibitions because the Bible tells us that we may not build the tabernacle, and so therefore all of those are biblical prohibitions. They're not rabbinical inventions. But along those lines, we would say that the combustion engine is a biblical law. There's also a biblical law of Tichum Shabbos, that one is not allowed to travel outside of one's neighborhood 2,000 cubits, which is less than a mile. The neighborhood, if they're contiguous neighborhoods, so then the law is throughout all the contiguous neighborhoods. But if there's an area where they're not contiguous and there's no dwelling place, so then beyond those limits one may not travel. And so let's say one has a battery-powered car, and there might be some dispute as to whether or not the battery-powered car is a biblical prohibition or a rabbinical prohibition. Nonetheless, you'd have that prohibition of traveling outside of the Tichum Shabbos. So basically, that's the definition. And again, there are many other aspects of it, and one should learn the laws of the Sabbath, which could be found in various rabbinical texts, as well as the various opinions of other things that could be prohibited. Particularly when it comes to laws of cooking, there are a lot of different opinions, and one should be familiar with all these things. It's definitely proper to learn all these opinions, and so with it, and certainly to avoid all of the things that are certainly both prohibited either biblically or rabbinically if one is Jewish. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.